very excited about being able to bring a couple of guests here in the near future that I think will lend some really legitimate guidance to the men and young women that are going to be looking at this, trying to navigate the waters of, and they're difficult waters of high school recruitment into collegiate golf. So we have with us TJ Atley, who's recording this and is kind of the mentor for the two of us because she knows a lot more than we do. At least one of us, the one that's talking now.
That's two. That's not a peace sign. That's two. She knows
That's
more than
two.
two of us.
And so her credentials, I would urge anyone to go online. And we didn't rehearse this, but she's got more letters than a doctor. Member of the PGA, LPGA of Canada. It's published how many books? 8 books?
8 books now.
8 books now. And has generally helped many college youngsters navigate those tough waters, as I said. So we're happy to have her on this call with me. For those of you that don't know me, which is probably the large segment of golf, I try to stay behind the cacti. I'm Mike Hughes, a former golf coach at Brown University. Before that, I was at DePaul as an assistant. I finally retired after close to 17 years. And now we're trying to consult and help youngsters get to the next level to play collegiate golf. And for our first guest, this is our very first maiden voyage, as we were saying a few minutes ago. I am so happy to present my very good friend and fellow former coach, Jamie Green from Duke University. So we can clap. Yay, Jamie.
Yeah. Everybody out there who we can't hear.
And Jamie was previously at UNC Charlotte. And if I recall my bio study, I believe that you were an Ohio Wesleyan grad. Is that correct?
That is correct. Way back when I played college golf. I'm from Ohio, and I played my college golf at a Division III school, Ohio Wesleyan University, just north of Columbus, Ohio. And there's a little bit of an interesting tie. Rod Myers, who was the very well-known and esteemed Hall of Fame all over. He may not have as many letters after TJ Atley's name, but he's got a lot of them. We lost him, unfortunately, to leukemia in 2007, but I bring him up because he was the golf coach at Duke University from 1974 to 2007. And a little bit of trivia is that he and I both played for the same golf coach at Ohio Wesleyan University. So kind of an interesting tie. They were obviously Coach Gordon, Dick Gordon, or Doc, as we used to call him. He also passed away in the 2000s, but he coached for 40 years. And Rod Myers was on the front end of his career, and I was the last team in 1993 that he coached at Ohio Wesleyan. So you got your bio right. You had to go deep for that one, Coach Hughes.
Well,
and then we're also at Dartmouth. Is that right?
Yeah. So, I played college golf at Division III, and, we can, I'm sure you'll talk about this in your podcast with other coaches. I can touch a little bit upon a lot of different levels of college golf, because not only did I play at Division III, but I didn't think I was going to get into coaching whatsoever. I had a job. In fact, this is kind of a telltale sign of how old I am. This is my 40th year in golf in terms of being employed, because I started working when I was 15 as just a cart boy and trying to play some free golf at a golf course nearby. And now I'm 55. So do your math. That's 40 years in the game of golf. But I started out thinking that I was going to be a club professional out of college, a little bit of decent play, but not quite good enough to, certainly take a stab at making a living of playing. But I ended up getting a job at Dartmouth College's home course, Hanover Country Club. Bill Johnson, another Hall of Famer, who unfortunately we also lost this year, back in 2013, excuse me. But at any rate, the point being that I was in it for the PGA. And so I got my Class A as a PGA member. And the longer I hung around the Hanover Country Club, grounds in the spring and fall when the Dartmouth men's team and the Dartmouth women's team would hang around. Bill was the men's team for many decades, and his wife Izzy was the women's coach, and she was also an LPGA and PGA member. So it was a really cool place for me to be exposed to college golf in a very different way, as a club pro where the players came to play and practice, but also to have my boss and mentor be, a PGA professional, kind of cutting edge teaching professional back then. And then, he said, "Hey, what do you think about helping the team out a little bit?" So I ended up went on my off weekends or whenever I could, I'd travel and hang out with the Dartmouth 10 men's team. I actually helped the Tulane women's team for a little while because that grad was also a Dartmouth grad, Sue Bauer. And so, long story short, yeah, I started coaching part-time at Dartmouth. I decided this is what I want to do full-time. So I moved from there to about as far as you could go, not maybe geographically, but socially. It was interesting. I went from Hanover, New Hampshire to Auburn, Alabama, and went from an Ivy League school where we had a pretty doggone team. In fact, the last tournament I was there, the team won in the Ivy League. It wasn't the Ivy League championship, but they won an event. But I joined an Auburn team that was ranked in the top 10 in the country
Wow.
athletically. And the likes of Jason Duffner, who a lot of people have heard of, but also some guys on that Auburn team were good enough to play professionally. So I really dove into deep waters and learned pretty quickly baptism by fire, and was at Auburn for 2 years. I'll go quickly. UNC, Chapel Hill. Most people just know it as UNC for 4 years as an assistant. And then I was at UNC Charlotte as a head coach from '03 to '09 before I ended up at Duke here from 2009 to 2025. In fact, I'm counting the days, not months or years, that I've been a recent retiree. And actually, I'm thrilled to be on this podcast because this is actually what I'm doing right now. I'm helping junior golfers find the right fit or find at least what they need to get better at in terms of anything from scheduling tournaments to a little bit of, golf swing instruction to on-course management, you name it. So that's me.
Wow, that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey, a lot of miles, a lot of different schools and programs. But yeah, to be able to be at a place like Dartmouth to start, Ohio Wesleyan, obviously a Division III school, they don't have any athletic scholarships. So focus there is certainly on academics. And then to be at Duke here for 16 and a half years, it's been a really great opportunity for me to see what the real student in student athlete goes through on a regular basis.
Oh, that's certainly a polished enough resume that you and I are friends for a long time, and I appreciate you venturing into the waters with us, kind of either sinking or swimming together. But as a good friend of mine, it's anybody that's watching this should be reaching out towards Jamie Green. Believe me. I also wanted to say too that Rod Myers, isn't your golf tournament named after him?
It is actually. When I got there in 2009, it had been the Duke Golf Classic. Duke had hosted a tournament on their home golf course. They're one of a number of schools now, but a few. There weren't a ton back then when in the 1950s they built that golf course. But he hosted a tournament for a lot of years in the fall, and we continued the tournament. But we decided to name it after Coach Myers, and we did things a little differently than he did. We hosted all the teams right there at the Washington Duke Inn, which is an amazing facility. I mean, regardless of whether you ever would go to Duke as a student or play college golf there or even play a tournament there, just what an amazing place to stay. And one of the reasons why we felt like it was a fun tournament for our coaches and teams to go to is they could stay in the hotel room and then walk right downstairs and there's the putting green, and the first tee.
Wow.
Pretty hard
So
to
it's
pretty
kind
hard
of
to
like
miss.
it's like Bandon Dunes then, because I haven't been
Yes,
there.
that's
Yeah,
right. That's right.
where the property is at the course.
The golf course is literally owned by the university. The hotel is owned by the university, and they are all on campus. And
Wow.
that's one of the neat things about Duke. I'll plug it here a little bit, just from a recruiting standpoint. You can walk from the middle of campus where the Duke Chapel is, which is pretty famous. You can walk there in less than 9 minutes and be on the first tee. So it's a
Wow.
pretty cool place if you want to be a collegiate golfer for sure.
All right. Well, that's a good segue into what I was going to ask you about. Jamie and I had the opportunity to speak earlier today, and he and I don't speak enough. It's always a good talk to get his perspective. But we were talking about the success that your program has had or did have. Guys like Alex Smalley and Joe Ogilvie and Kevin Streelman, and you've got
Hmm.
litany.
Max Grazeman right now, one of the top 50 players in the world. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so for the young man or young woman that's watching this podcast, what would be your advice if that's something that they want to pursue, knowing that the road is very hard and treacherous? But
And yeah,
how would you go about doing that?
in terms of speaking specifically about wanting to play professionally after college, is that what you're saying, or what do you mean?
Yes, for someone that wants to play certainly professionally and perhaps needs just to have a plan as to how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, the world of college golf is loaded with elite players on both women and men's side. There's no doubt about that. To the point where the PGA Tour even decided they needed to create a PGA Tour university where there's a direct avenue for the best of the best college men's players to get right onto the PGA Tour's Korn Ferry Tour and have full access. That was a huge deal
That's a huge win.
Yeah, it's a huge win for college golf. A huge win, I think, for the PGA Tour because those players are successful when they get out there. And the old way of trying to Monday qualify or go through a Q school when you had to be hot just the right time, to try to make it out there. Those opportunities still exist, but to have one for college players, and again, for anyone who doesn't know about this, and of course you can read up on it. It is for specifically students who stay in college for 4 years. So you can't play great your first or second year, like a Tiger Woods, for example, and have exemptions and be able to turn pro. You have to stay there for 4 years, and basically they have a point system. And if you play well enough in collegiate events, you're going to get direct access. You have to be one of the top 5 players in college golf, but they are looking at both junior and senior years. And so that has added one thing, Coach Hughes, the old very simply play better is what you'll hear from a college coach or, somebody else who wants a better tee time on the PGA Tour and they're at a policy board meeting and they usually hear, well, just play better. That's the answer. But at the end of the day,
cars, all that stuff.
That's right. That's right. At the end of the day, whether you are playing at Brown University or you are playing at let's see, I'm trying to think of who played in the national championship this year, Virginia and Oklahoma State. You may be playing at one of the top 2 or 3 or 5 teams in the country athletically, or you may be playing somewhere else academically, but you still have that same equal opportunity to get onto the PGA Tour through PGA Tour U. So there's one. Your question about what advice would I have, very simply, other than saying play better, is you have to have places to get better. And I think when you're surrounded by people, and that doesn't necessarily always have to be the head coach of the college golf team. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's as an assistant coach. Sometimes there's a teaching professional nearby at the golf course or the university at which you go. But I think it's pretty rare that you ever see anyone make it on the men or women's side from college who doesn't have sort of a team around them. You hear that these days. It's such an all-encompassing game. It's not just golf swing and ball striking. It's nutrition. It's mentality. It's so many different things. It's balancing, quite frankly, fatigue. When you're traveling. I think a lot of folks don't realize that college golf is pretty tough, just because we miss more generally, at least on the Division I level, as long as the university allows the school to play in the maximum number of events. you'll miss as many school days as baseball in Division One, and there's a lot of missed class there. So what that requires is an ability to balance and take classes that you can handle, take classes obviously that you're interested in. But as I kind of digressed over there on the academic side, on the golf side, I think you need to have an opportunity to get into tournaments. And when I say that, sometimes some folks kind of reach for the stars in terms of the team that they're looking for that they'd like to play. And there's nothing wrong with having aspirations and goals and dreams, but to understand that if you want to play for an Oklahoma State or this year Virginia made it to the national championship, the year before Auburn University, and again, I'm just speaking on the men's side, there's only one or two, maybe three spots, and roster limits have gone down. So the numbers are so few and far between to be able to play on a few of those teams. The point that I make here, I think, is figuring out whether that's your sophomore, your junior, your senior year in high school, where's the place where I can play that if I play well and maybe a little better than I'm playing now, it's good enough for me to go to a tournament. It's good enough for me to play in the lineup. And that there is a little bit of a mystery card there, and that's not an easy formula to figure out. But I do think it's pretty hard for anybody who plays professionally to go to a school and be sitting on the bench on their college team. It's kind of hard to believe that you're going to make it professionally if you can't beat, more than half the players on your own college team. So I think having opportunities to play wherever you go, and then breaking it down just even more, I think because players on the men and women's side on the professional ranks are so used to shooting under par, that the younger you are when you get used to shooting under par, the better. And I mean that to the degree where I was just helping a young man down in Florida a few days ago, and he was asking me a very similar question, Coach. He said, what do you do with your players in college so that they get more comfortable, shooting in the red? And I said, well, one of the first things we do is we set up a golf course where every single hole they play, they're going to have a wedge in their hand. So if it's a par three, they're going to play from the tees that is their wedge distance. It could be a pitching wedge, a gap wedge, a lob wedge, sand wedge. And then we set up all the par fours that they can't reach with driver, but they can hit something off the tee. And then now maybe they think strategically, but if they hit it decently, they're going to have a wedge in their hand. And then we have them play the par fives from all the way back, assuming that my mentor, Bill Johnson, used to say a par five is nothing more than something, and a wedge. So, if we put them in position to have 18 wedges in their hand and they're not shooting under par, now we really got some stuff to look at. But I don't care what player you are, you got to get really, really, really good at wedge play. And that was the point that I made to that player as a high school sophomore was, if players think they're good at wedge play, they're not good enough. I mean, Tiger Woods is maybe the best example. He was clearly as elite as anybody could come by winning 3 straight U.S. juniors and 3 straight U.S. amateurs. But when he got out on the PGA Tour, his wedge game had to get better. And what I mean by that is he had to have more shots in his bag of wedges. He had to have shots that didn't spin so much. He had to be able to control his trajectory, his landing spot, his spin rate. That wedge game. It can't be spoken enough about. But, that's really the key to being able to shoot in the red. And ultimately, if you're talking about playing professional golf, that's what you got to do.
Let me touch on something you said a few minutes ago here, which I find very important. With the overwhelming number of students that are not going to be able to play on the PGA Tour, explain how you would go about saying to a young man or a young woman that you don't want to be the guy that's the 12th guy in the bench just because they have a pretty Duke bag. If you're going to go play college golf, you want to go play college golf. In other words, being the 12th man on Duke's team, which is a great honor and the chance to be coached by you. But if you're not going to play, what's the sense? You want to go someplace where you can fight for a spot in the lineup every time, travel with the team. The camaraderie of being in a bus or a van is great, but you want to be able to compete.
Yeah. I think, at the end of the day, coaches like you and I and all those coaches on the men and the women's sides at every level will say that. I'll flip it just a little bit, coach, and I'll say it ultimately depends on the kind of experience that the student wants. You
Yeah.
know, if the student wants to be on the team and go to XYZ university because they have the major that they're looking for, but the golf team is maybe just a little bit over their head, or, you know, maybe they get there, they think they were going to compete, the coach gave them a spot and they're not playing their best golf. Does that mean they should transfer? You know, if they're on the bottom of the bench, I just think it really depends on what the experience is. Now, if being on the team and not traveling to tournaments, not being competitive, makes you unhappy at that university. I always tell people in the recruiting process, if you look around, and it didn't matter what school I coached at, I would say the same thing. If you broke your leg and you couldn't play, is this where you want to be at school? Is this where you want to go to
Mm.
classes? And if the answer is yes, then maybe it's okay to be the 12th person on the team or the ninth person on the team. But however, if your comeback is to say, no, I don't care, you know, what the buildings look like, and yes, I care about my degree, and yes, I care about my major, but I want collegiate golf, traveling with the team, having the camaraderie, being able to build those stories that you talk about. I want that to be a major part of my college experience. And if that's their answer, then yeah, you've got to find a place where you can play.
That's one of the things Coach and I have always talked about the last few months is there's a place for everyone.
For sure. No question about it. You know, this is sort of a weird way to put it, but we have a lot of folks when I was at Duke, and again, we're not talking about very long ago. I still get emails sent to me thinking I'm the golf coach at Duke. So we get hundreds and hundreds. I mean, it's literally
Yeah, what would you say is the most number of young men that were interested in Duke per year, like over 1,000?
it may not be quite that much, TJ, but it's definitely over 500. I would say on average it's in the 700s. In all honesty, the reason why it's probably not more is because there's so much good information on the internet now, you know, in the last 20 years where people can kind of figure it out. You know, am I really going to be a good fit there? Whereas, you know, I'm not sure whether college golf was maybe the trend or the thing to do 40 years ago when the internet wasn't around, but you know, people probably shot, you know, threw darts in the dark a lot more. They had no idea whether or not they could play at a school or not. Now there's all sorts of tools. You know, I know Junior Golf Scoreboard. I'm not trying to, you know, boast anybody or put a plug out there, but there's a lot of different websites where you can kind of figure out where your game is as a junior golfer. If you just plugged yourself into that college lineup, could you play there? And of course, there's always improvement to be made, but at least it gives you how far away am I? You know, am I 3 shots away? Am I a shot and a half away? Am I 9 shots away? But the the thing that I had a conversation with a young man's father, I say that because I didn't want I didn't want the young man to feel like I was you know, sort of minimizing his ability. But I knew pretty quickly he probably wasn't going to be able to compete on the team at Duke. And, you know, he was sort of nearing the end of his high school, so he was really looking for a place to play. And he, the player, and his parents were very set on wanting an academic experience that was rigorous, that the degree was well known, that they felt like it was going to be a really good place for him, you know, to, let's face it, be marketable or find a good job, right? So whether we're talking about a couple of pennants behind you on the wall there from the Ivy League or lots of other schools, Division 2 or 3 or otherwise, academics were really important. So what I told them was, well, if he's set on playing Division 1 golf, that he wants that number, you know, not to say here I am played Division 3 and lots of great players play Division 2, Division 3, and AIA, junior college golf. But if he wants to play Division 1 golf, probably a good thing for him to do is actually to look at the rankings at the end of the year and not look at the top and work your way down to a place where you think you might play. In this case, and again, I'm talking to dad here. I wasn't talking to the student. I said, look at the bottom. Look at the 312th ranked team in the country and ask yourself, academically, do I want to go there? And if the answer is no, then you just move up and you just keep going up, 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 and up from the bottom till you see 1 to 10 to 15 academic institutions where you say, okay, I could be proud of that degree. That's an academic place I could go. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, at that place, he's probably going to be able to play on that team, right?
Yeah.
So then the next step becomes, all right, well, now let me do a little bit more digging about what's their team like? What culture do they have? Do they have a part-time coach? Do they have a travel schedule where I actually get to leave the state? You might have to do a little bit more digging once you do that. But again, I think it's so easy for players to kind of start shooting for the stars at first.
Mhm.
And again, nothing wrong with trying, but it's also okay to say, well, let me go look at some places where academically I like where I could graduate from, and I know I'd play on the team. Maybe I wouldn't be the best player right away, but I would certainly be good enough to travel in the top 5 my freshman year. Well,
Mhm.
that's a very different experience. When
Yes.
you're going to go to events the very first year, if you just simply play at the level that you're at without much improvement, that's a totally different experience that you could have. So that's a different way to look at it.
Let me let me ask you a question here. Now you've managed to get into the program that you were hoping for.
Yep.
What advice would you give? I know as a former coach, I used to harp on the fact that you had to be great at time management in an Ivy League school. Now, maybe that person's experience is different than someone that went to a state school. Maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
how important is time management for the kids that came into you as recruits and made the team and started traveling and playing and competing?
It's everything, to the point where in the first week we would make sure that, in our day and age, maybe not the three of us, but people who are the age of who we recruit, they're so used to doing everything on the phone, right? They're so used to all their calendars and their reminders and everything else is on the phone. But excuse me, what I would do even as recently as last year is I would sit our freshmen down with a plain old binder calendar that has every 15 minutes. And even if you go 1 month at a time or one semester at a time, we've got highlighters, we've got pens, and basically we start with class time, and we're filling in each day with just the class time. Well, the class meets at 9, it ends at 10:30. Let's say it's a Tuesday, Thursday class. Well, you can't just start at 9. You got to walk to class. How many minutes does that take? All right. Well, you're not going to show up right at 9, so you're going to have to get there. Basically, we're filling up each day, starting academically, along with plugging in how much sleep are you going to get. I mean, let's be realistic here. You're not going to get 12 hours of sleep like you might in the summertime when you don't have class. So, when are you going to plug in your 8 hours or however many that you need? How long is it going to take you to shower? I mean, I may be boring people, but I think the idea here is you just can't assume anything when you're a
Right.
college student. You have to plug in literally everything, starting with academics, then with your health, and then I've got to eat, right? So where am I going to eat? Am I going to eat at the dining hall near my last class? Am I going to eat at the golf course? You don't want to make that something rushed. Um, better and better nutrition options are out there on campus, but sometimes it takes a few minutes, to wait for your food. So again, we're plugging in absolutely everything, and then you plug in practice time. And just like anything else, if you've got college practice that starts at 2 p.m., the coach doesn't want you to be showing up there at 1:59. The coach is expecting you to be there ready to go at 2 o'clock for whatever the drill is. So to answer your question, I think a player or a student really needs to see that on paper and realize how many hours are left. And in terms of what is left, it all depends on your academic rigor. I'm not the fastest reader, so I might have had to plug in a lot more reading time if I had a history class for my schedule. But if there are classes that, more and more classes at certain schools meet online, so maybe that's a different kind of schedule. But the idea of, you hear the phrase time management, or you say it so much that it almost goes in one ear and out the other until you can actually see it, until you actually live it and realize, and it's not uncommon that you go through the first few weeks or months even with a freshman before they really get into a rhythm and realize, okay, I'm feeling good about when I get to practice. I'm not feeling like I'm rushed, or I'm making it to workouts on time at 7 in the morning, and I'm actually having time to get breakfast. There takes them a little while to get used to things, but you can't state it enough, Coach. And I think the other thing to kind of remember, parents can talk about my son or my daughter they're so good at time management, and you might even hear a teacher give a recommendation for a student that you're looking at for college team, saying, oh, he or she, their time management is just exceptional. Well, I don't know how many schools are out there where your high school is anything other than one building. So
Right.
sure, you can be great at time management from ninth grade to 12th grade,
Mm-hmm.
but let's talk about, we have literally two campuses at Duke, and they're a mile away. You have to take a bus to get to one or the other, and you might have your first class on one campus, your second class on another campus. You better hope the bus isn't late. It's a different environment. So
Yeah, I
it's a
remember, yeah, University of Washington, I was at the biggest dorm. It was 13 stories. And then my electives were literally on the other side of campus. It was like a 22-minute walk if I walked fast.
right, right. And so again, the idea there is, um, you can't, and we're just talking about the stuff to do. That hasn't anything to do with sitting out and hanging out and meeting new people, right? And
Yeah,
and
I was
actually
I was just I was,
watching a football game on TV or something.
I was just going to interject with this. What I used to say to my student athletes when they came on campus is it's kind of a three-pronged attack. You've got your academics, which at the institution I was at, that was the most important thing.
Mhm.
You were there to play golf. Golf had hopefully enhanced your ability to get into school. But there's a social aspect too. You don't want to
Right.
be going to these schools. They're going to be dances and parties. This is going to be the best time of your life. Our good friend Richie Parker up at Hanover, your former school there at Dartmouth, will
Yeah,
say it beautifully. He goes, "There's no bad college experience."
that's very
And
well put. Yeah.
I think that's very, very important. So if you can say, look, I have to devote enough time to my studies. I'm here to play golf. If you're a place like Duke, and say to yourself, look, I mean, there are great courses offered at Duke and certainly at Brown University. There's lots of great things that are going on there that you should
Hmm.
also experience while you're at the campus.
Right. And I think the thing to then back up about that, we're talking about thousands of potential colleges around just the United States, right?
Right.
There's a lot of different setups, and so it really a lot depends on what the expectations are. Meaning, what are the expectations of the professors? What are the expectations of the golf coach? And what are the expectations of the athletic department of the golf team? And at a place like Duke or an Auburn, or I'm just picking schools that have been in the
Sure.
top 25 lately, the expectation is that you will put in however much time is necessary for us to be competitive. And that that has to be something considered. Just like me saying I'm not the fastest reader in the world, I've got to plug in enough time for me to get my history classes, information read. Well, if my short game isn't good enough to get myself in the lineup, it doesn't matter if there's only 20 hours of team practice. I might have to put in another 15. And so if it really depends on who you are as a player, what you need to work on, how long it takes for you to work on that, and then really what the expectations are of the team. Because it may be, it may not be a club team, but there may be some teams that a player or a student athlete or prospective student athlete could look at where it's the demands on the athletic side just aren't that time consuming, comparatively. I'm not
Yeah.
saying they don't exist, but comparatively, they may just not be. You might put in 65% of your time on academics and, 15% of your time on athletics. And then the rest of the time you have for social life or whatever else. It really depends on what the expectations are at the school you're in.
Okay, let me switch gears for a second. Someone's out there that Green is interested. You go watch and play. What are you looking for?
Well, one thing that I don't have to worry about is looking for scores because I can do that on the internet, right? If the only thing I want to do is find out whether they can shoot under par, I already know that. I probably wouldn't have gone to see them if I didn't think they could shoot under par.
Yeah.
So what I tend to look at, you'll hear a lot of coaches say, well, I'm looking for attitude, or I'm looking for, something that I can't see on a golf resume, whether that's an email or even if it's a swing video. I personally, I'm looking for, what does the player do between shots, right? Like what are they doing to get ready for the next shot? How are they preparing for this shot, which, I may be looking at a shot where, let's just say, an iron shot into a par four with a tucked pin, and the ball is in the rough, right? So there might be quite a few decisions to be made, and I'm looking to see how ready is that player to hit the shot. I'm not saying that they need to take very long, but by the time they get to their ball, they should have some information. They should know about what the yardage is. They should have an idea of roughly it's going to be one of about 3 or 4 different clubs. And then ultimately, I'm going to watch and see whether or not once they've made their decision, they go through a routine that seems consistent. And when I say that, I'll have had to watch enough shots to know what that consistent routine is. But if it's a sporadic routine, or if it doesn't look like the player took the time to consider that the golf ball might come out hot out of that flyer lie and go over the green, and over the green was out of bounds, those are the things that we tend to look for. I do, at least when I was out there recruiting. What are the decisions that are to be made? How quickly do they make them? Do they make them thoroughly? And the other thing I told this young man a couple of days ago, he has a little bit of, my good friend Joe Inman, who used to coach at Georgia State and also played on tour. Yeah. Joe said, listen, I as a coach, I said, I want some fire in the furnace. I want some fire in your belly, but I don't want it to burn down the house. So that's something that I'm okay if I see a little, slap on the hip if a putt didn't go in, or, if he hit a pitch shot that rolled out to 12 feet really, and it really wasn't that tough of a shot. But what I tried to describe to this young man afterwards, he's a high school sophomore, he's got some growth. I said, I want you to develop the fact that your reactions to shots, aren't so quick to the outcome. Because what it tells me, if the reaction, which is a negative one or whatever, let's just say slams his club in there or whatever. If your reaction is so quick after the shot, then you are bound up emotionally quite a bit in the consequence and in the result, whether the result is the score or whether it was the result of that shot. And we all know it's a scoring game, and the game is an addition of all these separate shots. So yes, it's understandable. But if you are an emotional person, that you kind of have a little bit of fire in the furnace, like Joe Inman said, I want to see the reaction happen later. And the reason why is because I want to know that the reaction was based on something under your control. So if you hit a putt and it didn't go in, then you should know right away. Well, you should know whether it goes in or not. Did I hit it solidly? Yes or no? It's a yes or no answer. Pretty much right away, right? Did I hit it on the line that I meant to, that I was guessing was the right line for the ball to go in? And thirdly, did I hit it with the right pace and on the right direction so that it was the right read? So basically, I have 3 concrete yes/no answers that I can tell myself. And if the answer was no, that I lost focus and didn't trust the read, then go ahead, slap yourself on the hip. You should be frustrated with yourself about that because it was something under your control. But if your reactions are so quick to just the consequence of the ball going in or not, that's a hard game to win. That's something it's difficult to work on that after the round or in between tournaments. But
what about the effect that it's got on Mo, Larry, and Curly behind him?
Yeah, right. There's so many other consequences that you've got to, if you're getting frustrated because of things that are out of your control, that is something that you've got to pay attention to, because ultimately you can't work on those things. So, the only thing you could do is then acknowledge, hey, I'm letting myself get frustrated about this player that's playing slowly in my group. I'm acknowledging that I'm getting frustrated. So now what's my plan?
Right. What's
Am
the
I going to
plan?
laugh about it inside, or am I going to say something to the rules official because we're already all and half behind? Have a plan rather than just getting frustrated and making poor decisions and then blaming the other play for.
Blaming somebody else.
Yep, that's right.
What do you think of this? What do you think? I was on the golf course a few days ago and I saw a girl who I don't teach. She was literally 8 yards from the pin, chipping, and she took out her rangefinder from like literally 8 yards. And I was just like, I can't. Like,
Go ahead, coach. She teed it up for you.
Well, here's the only thing that I have to say about that, right? The ways of teaching are so different now than they were when we were learning the game. I don't even have to say how old all of us are, right? The
mhm,
reality of it is literally what we thought made the golf ball fly in terms of path and face
mhm,
are upside down. We learned once TrackMan and some of these other technological advances, once we learned that the ball starts on its line because of club face and not because of swing path direction, that changed teaching. And so I think something that sometimes we as instructors or whatever else we have to kind of acknowledge is and I'm only having this girl's back because I don't know anything about her instruction, but if
mhm,
her instructor said, you know what, when you've got a pitch that's exactly 24 yards long and it's a perfect lie, I want you to hit it with this trajectory and with this much backswing and with this much speed going forward. Well, that's
mhm,
a different way of teaching. That is a Bryson DeChambeau, to the nth degree. And I wouldn't teach it, but that doesn't mean that it's not some way that somebody
mhm,
else has some scientific method. Now, that being said, you better be able to punch those numbers into the computer really fast. Because if you
mhm,
do all that science, at some point you're taking too long to hit to the golf shot. And so I I do think it's a little bit silly. I'm with you on the rangefinder, because the reality of it is that's just one bit of information, and I'd like to think that if she shot that yardage, she also thought, okay, well, it's X number of feet or yards away from me. However, I've got to land the ball here. It's got to come down at this trajectory, and it's going to
mhm.
have to roll at this pace going over. That has nothing to do with the rangefinder. That
That's
has
right.
to do with creativity and the right side of your brain and, those sorts of things. So I'm trying to give credence to the possibility that somebody could
Sure.
be teaching something that's pretty technologically advanced, but at the same time, there's the thing that I love about the game more than anything else, and I have since I was young, and it doesn't mean I was always good at it, but I love teaching it, is that you really have to be good at both sides of your brain. And you've got to be good as a creative person, and you've got to be good as an analytic person. And you've got to be good at knowing when to turn one on and turn one off, and when to
Mhm.
use one and when to use the other. And one of them might not be particularly sharp, and that's an area that you work on. So I think it's I think it's I think it's fair to say that when you get close enough to the green that you can throw the golf ball and get it there,
Yeah.
you don't need a rangefinder. But that's my
Oh.
opinion.
Oh, I like that. I like that. You get close enough that you can throw it on. You don't need a rangefinder.
Correct.
Okay, I
Yep.
love that.
I have nothing to say about that whole segment.
Okay, Coach,
That's
one
fair.
last question for
Yes. Yeah.
Coach Jamie. Coach Hughes, I want you to ask one last question.
Um, how important is it for you to go to a tournament, watch a kid play, and say the person may have an unorthodox swing? Does that ever factor into anything you're the reason I'm asking this is because
Hmm.
I was very fortunate enough to work for, the guy that had the biggest influence in my career was Jim Fleck.
Mm,
Mm.
And the one thing he said to me that I think about every single day that I coach golf, if you want to assess a player, don't go to the driving range, go to the scorer's tent. And,
Hmm.
and that kind of
mm,
falls into what you were saying there a little bit about, am I looking for someone that's just shooting scores. I can do that on the internet.
Right.
I guess my long-winded way of asking this question is, what would make Jamie Green come back from the golf course and say, "I'm going to offer to this kid because I think he's going to be a Duke"?
Well, the first part of your question is the last part of your question's got a lot of layers. What does it take for me to make an offer to somebody or to pick that one person out of hundreds to say I want you on the team, regardless of scholarship or anything else? There are a lot of things that go into that. That being said, if we're just talking about golf swing or technique or standing on the driving range, I'll kind of turn it on you a little bit. I understand his point about going to the scorer's tent. That being said, I would like to be on the driving range, not necessarily to break down somebody's golf swing and have a video camera on it, but I want to see the golf ball fly. I want to see, do they hit it high? Do they hit it low? Can they hit it left to right or right to left? If they've got to punch it out of the trees, do they even have a motion that could do that? What do they do on the driving range with their time? Do they always have sticks down, or do they have sticks down for a little while and then move them away because they realize they don't have them on the golf course? One of the things I heard a story when I was just out of college, and I don't know the name, so kind of take this with a shaker of salt. But Jim Furyk's dad, apparently, and most people know Jim Furyk, even if you don't know as a young person much about his game, go ahead and pull up some videos. But I think he would be the prototypical, are you going to recruit this guy based on his swing or not? And the story that I heard was that Jim Furyk's dad took a young Jim Furyk, a high school Jim Furyk, to a very accomplished swing pro and watched and just said, watch my son hit some balls and tell me what you think. And he hits a bunch of, I don't know, however many balls, right? Enough balls that you could make an assessment. And the dad turns to the pro and says, what do you think? And he said, I'm not touching that swing. He goes, what are you talking about? It's all over the place. I mean, you got to have something. You're one of the best. He said, I can cover those golf balls with a blanket. What do I need to work on that golf swing for? The golf ball tells me what I need to know. Now that goes along with the scorer's tent kind of comment. So there's one thing that I have learned, I guess, if there's something to kind of take away, and that's why I'm looking forward to working with juniors even more than I had been working with 18 to 22-year-olds. Bodies are different. Ways of swinging the golf club are different. Ways of holding the golf club are different. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way. What I do think is that sometimes as instructors or even as players, we tried so hard to fit round pegs into square holes. And, it doesn't have to be just this way. Now, if the golf ball's going all over the place and you're hitting it thin and fat and on the toe and on the heel, then yes, you've got some things to have to figure out. But if the way your anatomy is, or the way that your clubs work with your body, or the way that we've probably all taught people that had handicaps of one way or another, right? For whatever reason, and can they play golf and enjoy the game? Absolutely. I've been out here long enough to watch players get recruited who have two gloves. That's like, you couldn't imagine that 25 years ago. Oh my gosh, they wear two gloves, or people that have their lead hand lower than their backhand. And we're talking about players who were playing at the national championship, and nobody would have done that 25 years ago. So my answer to your question is, I will be on the driving range, but I'm going to be on the driving range looking at ball flight, and I'm going to be on the driving range looking at their practice habits, both before the round. I want to see how they warm up. After the tournament, round is over, what are they going to go work on? And then basically just on a practice day, what are they doing when there's no tournament to be played? And what I can learn from those things on the driving range, I am very much interested in.
Very well put, my friend.
Wow, no kidding.
Well, listen, for our maiden voyage, this was a home run.
I didn't wreck the trip.
Home run.
The ship isn't sinking. All right, good. I got us afloat. We could have touched on a number of topics and talked all night, you and I. But I'm really looking forward to the rest of your guests. I've had the privilege of knowing both of you for over 10 years. Watched you coach, watched you work at camps, watched you work with junior golfers, watched you talk with parents. I'm thrilled that you asked me to come on. I'm even more thrilled to watch future podcasts and hear the other coaches and see what things they have to say.
Well, they're going to have to go a long way to better you, my friend. And so
Ah,
it's
Yeah,
always a pleasure
100%.
to catch up with you.
thanks
Okay,
for having
thank you
me.
so much.
All right. Well, anybody else that's watching this video, these are the type of guests we're going to have on here. We make it a vow to put somebody out here that's going to give you good information and help you in the decision that you're about to make, which is a very important one. So anything we can do to help out, please let us know. And I will turn it over to my colleague, TJ, for the final word.
Okay, I appreciate both of your guys' time and your insight with both the questions from Coach Hughes, and also the answers from Coach Jamie Green was amazing.
Thank you all.
Really
Love being
appreciate
here.
it. Thank you.
Good luck to your show.
Adios. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Bye bye now.
Bye.
See you.